Hello, guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Here's a look ahead to Newcastle United's trip to Burnley. Eddie Howe's done his pre-match press conference this morning, and there's mixed news on the injury front, as you would expect with this season, given how difficult it's been throughout the campaign. Fabian Schär, who's been suffering with a hamstring injury, will not play in the game at Burnley tomorrow. He's also unlikely to play in any of the last four games: Brighton, Manchester United, and then obviously ending with Brentford. Newcastle still going for sixth place, still going for Europe. Looks like seventh is going to be the Conference League, so there's a real chance of European qualification. So it's a huge blow to miss yet another centre half, with obviously Sven Botman and Jamal Lascelles both out with ACL injuries. What will happen on the as a result of this? Well, Emil Kraft is likely to come in as an immediate response, as an immediate replacement, but also Paul Dummett and Alex Murphy are other options now, down to the bare bones in centre half, really. But it should mean that Lewis Hall gets a run at left back, which I think obviously everybody's been calling for a long time, and he's impressed me in recent weeks as well. Lewis Hall in that position at the moment. The back four seems to pick itself, certainly for the trip to Turf Moor tomorrow. Elsewhere, is better news with Miguel Almiron, Joe Linton, and Nick Pope all training at various points this week, which means that they could be in contention for tomorrow. Obviously, I've spoken on this channel many times about how Newcastle have missed Joe Linton's physicality and energy and the sort of power that he brings, and that allows Newcastle to press higher and be more intense and more, you know, demanding of themselves in midfield, which is a huge thing that the Newcastle have to do, have to work on away from home. Obviously, coming out into this game off the back of that defeat at Crystal Palace, where there was none of that on show. So Newcastle will hope that Joe Linton can play. Almiron's in the same boat, but I think overall, really, the difference has been Nick Pope and his absence since December, when he put that shoulder injury up against Manchester United. Newcastle have really lacked a goalkeeper with confidence of the back four. There's been a lack of communication too many times between the back four and Martin Dubravka, who stays on his line too much, in my opinion, and that's cost Newcastle quite dearly at times this season. But Newcastle need to win this game, and it's going to be a very tough game because Burnley are now suddenly right back in the fight to stay up. It's been amazing that they've sort of been very much cut off in the way Sheffield United have for much of the season, but recent form has picked up, and they have a chance to close the gap on Nottingham Forest. It's 2 from 3 now. Obviously, with Newcastle having relegated Sheffield United last week, and Burnley are very much in that position where they feel confident that they can get a victory out of this game and push on from there. I think Newcastle have to be aware and need to match that intensity, need to match that desire, because if they don't, then they'll come unstuck like they did at Crystal Palace, because that was another example. And quite frankly, it was disappointing because Newcastle have been in positions in 2024 where they've improved on their away performances because they have found a way to win. But they looked passive and slow and looked like they were waiting for Crystal Palace to do something, which is what they did for much of the first half of the season, when they only had one away win for the first half for the entire first half of the season, that win at Sheffield United. Crucially, I think another thing that I've said that Newcastle have missed all season and was crucial to them getting in the Champions League last year was at the back end of the season they had Isak and Wilson fit together, and that victory last week over Sheffield United was proof that the pair of them are vital to the way Newcastle play. This is the best goal-scoring season. I can't remember off the top of my head how many goals it is that they've scored now. So I think it's 73, 74. Best goal-scoring season in the Premier League, and a huge part of that is because they've got two goal scorers who will always find the net when fit. And it's a massive shame that they've barely been in the same squads together this season. At the back end of last season, you had Isak starting, scoring, coming off after 70 minutes, Wilson coming on to score in the last 15 or 20. I think that's really the way it needs to work for Newcastle towards the end of the season. There's obviously question marks over Callum Wilson's future because of PSR and whether he's the ideal kind of player to sell. But if they don't have to, I think, Eddie Howe said in his press conference a couple of weeks ago that a player with his goal scoring mark and his goal scoring prowess, and even now he showed it last week, he came in and scored a goal against Sheffield United. Even at this age, even with his injury problems, he's still reliable, and that's going to cost a lot of money to replace. So if Newcastle don't have to sell Callum Wilson, he certainly has a place in the squad as an option, as well as somebody who can come in and play alongside Isak. We also saw that at the back end of last season, as if Newcastle needed a goal, Isak went out to the left and Wilson started up front. I think that that's something that people don't want to see from the start, but it's a great game changer. It makes Newcastle much more difficult to contain when things aren't going well. I think Wilson can show in the next 4 games, as he showed last week, that he does have a future at Newcastle and he deserves a chance to stay. If Newcastle don't need to sell, as I say for PSR, it might be that he is the best option to sell, as was the conversation in January. If it's him or a player like Bruno or even Isak himself, then there's no real competition, unfortunately. But I don't buy this idea that he's done at Newcastle. I don't buy this idea that he needs to be replaced because he's not good enough, because I think he is. He just needs to be managed, and his fitness levels, the point of that he is in his career, that the fact is he's still as prolific as ever, and he doesn't need, crucially, a run of games to get up to speed. He always seems to score whenever he plays, and that's a huge positive for him. He's now the second Premier League all-time goal scorer, or joint second all-time Premier League goal scorer behind Alan Shearer, and that just speaks volumes about the quality that Callum Wilson has, but also the fact that I think he still has a future at this club. Do I think Newcastle will win the game? Yes, I do. I think they have to approach the game properly. They have to be aware of what Burnley are going after. Obviously, as I say, that they're in touching distance of both Luton and Nottingham Forest now. They'll be starting quickly. They'll be starting with intensity. They'll be starting with purpose. Newcastle have to match that. They can't come into this game thinking that they can ride it out and pick them off. That will not happen, because it didn't happen against Palace. There's warning signs there, but Newcastle is certainly good enough to win this game and keep that run for Europe going. It's a massive blow that Fabian Schär is not there. Newcastle will be in a very good position if they can win this game. And thank you very much for joining me on this video. Please like, share, and subscribe if this is what you like. I'm planning on doing a Q&A video at the end of the season. I did put a note out on my post out on my YouTube channel yesterday, asking for some questions. So do drop them below if you have any for the end of the season. I'm also planning on doing some Euros content as well. We have a lot of plans for next season off the back of the success of the Schalke story as well. So thank you very much for joining me. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.